When I first got my Osmo Pocket 3, I was amazed by how easy it was to capture stunning time-lapse videos with such a minimalist setup. What used to require a bulky camera and a heavy tripod could now be done with something I could literally slip into my pocket. This was especially useful in travel situations where carrying around heavy gear just wasn't practical. Then I picked up the Osmo Action 5 Pro. Initially, I didn't see it as a very useful new tool for capturing time-lapses. After all, time-lapses are typically shot stationary, which doesn't exactly scream action. And in early testing, my Osmo Pocket 3 was delivering better results anyway, especially in low light. But after spending some more time with the Osmo Action 5 Pro, I discovered that with some tweaks and the right settings, it can rival the Pocket 3 in image quality. Not only that, it even offers some big advantages that turn it into a seriously powerful time-lapse tool, and I'm looking forward to taking more time-lapses with it on future trips. So in case you're curious about how they compare, in this video I'll highlight the strengths of both cameras to help you decide whether the Osmo Pocket 3, the Osmo Action 5 Pro, or maybe even both, would be the best fit for your time-lapse needs. First of all, let's talk about the most noticeable difference in time-lapse footage between these two cameras, which is the field of view. To illustrate this, let's take a quick time-lapse with both cameras. As you can see, even when using the Osmo Action 5 Pro's standard D-warp FOV, which crops the image to straighten it and avoid the fisheye effect, it still captures a significantly wider scene compared to the Osmo Pocket 3. If we were to switch to the Osmo Action 5 Pro's wide FOV setting, the scene becomes even wider, although this time with a noticeable warped look. In this particular scene, the narrower focal length of the Osmo Pocket 3 happens to be more suitable. However, the wider angle of the Osmo Action 5 Pro really shines when you want to capture swooping landscapes or expansive sky time-lapses. There's no winner here, it all depends on the look you're going for. The key takeaway is that different focal lengths result in distinctly different looking time-lapses. One big advantage the Osmo Action 5 Pro has over the Osmo Pocket 3 is in its ruggedness, which is a major consideration when shooting time-lapses that span a very long period of time, which are often the most dramatic. For example, when I shot this night to day time-lapse from my balcony, I left the Osmo Action 5 Pro outside overnight without a second thought. With the Osmo Pocket 3, I would have been on edge and most likely unable to sleep, worrying about the elements damaging its delicate gimbal mechanism. So if you're planning to shoot long, unattended time-lapses during your next outdoor adventure, the Osmo Action 5 Pro feels like the more reliable companion. Its rugged build lets you focus on capturing the moment rather than worrying about protecting your own gear. While the Osmo Pocket 3's gimbal might make it more vulnerable to the elements, it's also what gives it a significant advantage, which is the ability to include tilts and pans in your time-lapses. This motion lapse mode is exclusive to the Osmo Pocket 3, and you need a separate, dedicated motion control device in order to achieve the same result with the Osmo Action 5 Pro. In my opinion, this is the Osmo Pocket 3's greatest strength. While not every time-lapse needs to incorporate movement, having the option to add dynamic motion can mix things up and keep things visually interesting. One remarkable and often overlooked difference between these two cameras is their slowest selectable shutter speed in manual time-lapse settings. On the Osmo Pocket 3, the slowest you can select is a 1-second shutter speed. In contrast, the Osmo Action 5 Pro allows for shutter speeds as long as 30 seconds. Now here's where things get really interesting with the Pocket 3. If you shoot a time-lapse in auto exposure and limit the ISO range, it can and will push the shutter speed beyond 1 second in low light conditions. For instance, when I used it to capture an astro time-lapse with a 40-second interval, the Pocket 3 automatically selected a 30-second exposure time. Thanks to its larger sensor, it's capable of capturing even more light when given the same exposure time as the Action 5 Pro. However, despite the great low light performance in auto mode, you don't have the ability to precisely control shutter speeds longer than 1 second on the Pocket 3. This can be a problem if you want a specific amount of motion blur. For example, in this scene I had to accept the 2-second shutter speed that the Pocket 3 chose for me. With the Osmo Action 5 Pro, I could manually force an 8-second shutter speed to create much longer and more dramatic light trails. This level of control makes the Action 5 Pro a better option for creative flexibility in specific scenarios like this. When it comes to image quality, the Osmo Pocket 3 comfortably beats the Osmo Action 5 Pro, both in daylight and especially in low light. You'll notice this gap most when using the Action 5 Pro's default settings in low light situations, where the camera freely cranks up the ISO to properly expose the shot, resulting in a very noisy image. Meanwhile, the Osmo Pocket 3 doesn't rely as heavily on boosting the ISO, so shooting in full auto isn't as problematic. However, there's a simple trick to drastically reduce that quality gap on the Osmo Action 5 Pro, which is to limit the ISO range to 100 to 800 while still using auto exposure. This forces the camera to expose the shot by slowing the shutter speed instead of increasing the ISO, resulting in a much cleaner image. The trade-off is that long exposures might not be ideal when you need strict control over motion blur. Another point to consider is the power of raw images combined with AI enhancing tools like Lightroom. Even particularly noisy time lapses from the Osmo Action 5 Pro can be salvaged if you have the raw stills, as I managed to do with this botched Holy Grail time lapse that was shot with uncapped ISO. So while the Osmo Pocket 3 definitely holds the edge in overall image quality, the difference isn't as big as I initially thought, and thanks to the flexibility of RAW files and powerful AI tools, the difference can be reduced even further when creating time lapses. After spending a good amount of time capturing time lapses with both cameras, you're probably wondering which one I think is better. Well, as you might expect, there's no clear-cut answer, because it really depends on your needs and shooting style. The rugged, waterproof DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro is the better choice for harsh outdoor environments, especially when you can't babysit the camera the entire time. Its wider field of view and the ability to manually select shutter speeds lower than 1 second add versatility for specific scenarios like capturing expansive landscapes or creating dramatic light trails. On the other hand, the Osmo Pocket 3 excels in image quality right out of the box, requiring far less effort to achieve great results. Its ability to capture motion time lapses without additional gear is great when you want to add dynamic movement to your footage. While you can enhance the Osmo Action 5 Pro's image quality by dialing in the right settings and applying enhancements in post, the Pocket 3 consistently delivers excellent results with minimal tweaking.